the best time to make a decision in your life, I think, looking back at it now, is when things are actually going well for you, because you can see things with a better perspective and you're not changing to try and get out of a bad place, or you're not trying to change to, scramble and, this will change my life. And too many real estate agents change brands because I think the grass is greener. If I just was here, it'd work for me. The reality is the grass is greenest where you have a go.
Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is one for the ages. Welcome back to Rethink Real Estate. I have, for the first time, this is going to be real strange, I'm going to be interviewing Mr. Mitch Peereboom. I just don't know how to start this off without giving a full-blown disclaimer. One, mate, this is just going to be a mutual admiration society for the next hour or however long this is going to be. Two is that there is many, many times where you and I have been in a room of thousands of people, and yet you and I believe that we're the only two that exist, and we believe that our gear and our funny stuff is the funniest stuff in the world. So this will be a true test. And I've got to apologize to everybody listening, because this could just be complete rot, but too bad, because this is one for us.
Mate, I want you to indulge. I'm a long-time listener, long-time supporter and lover of the podcast. And to be honest, I'm a little bit offended it's taken this long to be invited on, but we're here, 2023, and we're good to go.
Well, mate, I've got to be honest. I'm probably more nervous to do this one than I am any other one, because the opinions that you and I have that we share of the industry are just going to be fueling each other's fire, as it typically does.
Of course, but all out of passion, all out of the love for the industry, mate, and the fun that we've had.
So first of all, is that my audience is more North American than what it is Australian. So we're going to obviously go through your story. But the other part of this as well, folks, that for those that are listening, I'll correct him when he needs to be corrected, when he calls sellers vendors and he does those typical Australian things. Now, I just need to be clear, the other day I've completely devastated Jason on a business plan. Jason Scott, who's a good friend of Mitch and I's, he was actually Mitch's procurement officer for a period of time. He'd hate me saying that. But either way, is that he said the other day on a business plan that we were on Zoom, and he goes, it's just good to get on and have a chin wag. Now, Jason has been saying that for 4.5 years that he's been living in the US. And I said to everybody on the Zoom call, do any of you guys know what chinwag means? And all of them were like, I thought it was like a sexual connotation. Like, I don't know. I thought it was very offensive. I'm like, mate, you've been saying that for 4.5 years and no one knows what it is, or still.
You know what? As long as he's having a good time, that's all that matters. So
there you go. Speaking of good times, mate, let's start at the very beginning. How did you get into real estate, considering that you've been in real estate now for how long?
Since 2011. So that's 11 years.
And yet, how old are you?
28.
You're currently the CEO of Harcourts Queensland, where it all began?
I am. I literally, my office now is about 2 meters from my first desk, which was actually here when I worked for you. So the question of how I got into real estate, I was actually at an auction, and you were calling the auction, and I was like 17. I don't think I'd actually ended school yet, and you were the auctioneer at the time in Queensland. And I remember when you pulled up, I believe that you were late to the auction. There was a whole lot going on. And you walk in and you just start screaming at everyone and rip this deal together, and it sold, and it was like you drove off and obviously had to get to your next auction. And I said to my mum, who was actually the listing agent of the property, I said, who is that guy? And she was like, that's Ben. He's the chief auctioneer, and he's very dynamic, and we love Ben. And from then I decided that being an auctioneer looked pretty cool.
Do you know the funny part about that is that I often forget that Kate is your mum.
Yes.
She's such a sweet, subtle lady that, don't get me wrong, very successful in her property management business and selling real estate. But to actually look that somebody as boisterous and robust as Mitch Peereboom has come from Kate is actually quite confronting. I forget that. But I remember this. Indulge me in this point here. You're sitting in your mum's office in Ascot.
Yeah,
I've rolled in. Okay, I've rolled in, and here's this sharp young gentleman, like khaki pants on, beautiful, these really nice brown shoes, nice shirt, looking real sharp. And I went to you and I'm like, mate, love those shoes. They look excellent. Where'd you get them from? I'll never tell you.
Well, mate, I didn't want you to go and buy them because, it was sort of my thing. I was like, these are great shoes. And, I was obviously looking at you going, look at this unit, and it was that moment where I was probably trying to impress you by being wit more than anything.
Mate, the absolute beauty of the point of being able to pause, no expression on your face and be like, I'm not telling you. I'd never met you before. And that was the first thing you said to me.
In hindsight, I actually probably stuffed that up, really. I would have had to scramble after that to make something happen. But it didn't take long before something did happen. I think I pursued you relentlessly for a job, and it was basically whatever job was available at the time. And I just got my license because I just turned 18. So.
Well, so let's talk about where you cut your teeth, mate, because I think that's really important from a context perspective that people, as we go through your journey, they need to understand where the skill set came from. You were essentially thrown into the deep end like no other deep end. Like I would ultimately, there's one of the things that I would certainly say is that, I certainly gave you the original foundation of real estate, but that foundation was only once you come to me asking questions. It wasn't from, I had no idea how to manage you. Like I just knew that I was going to throw you in the deep end and you're either going to sink or you'll swim. And essentially what we did is we put you into listing presentations with agents to go and get marketing dollars and convert them to auction. Now, for those that are listening that don't understand, in Australia, you actually have to, the seller will pay marketing dollars, and the more marketing dollars that we can get them to pay, the more committed they are to selling. But the other part of this is that not every property in Australia goes to auction. You have to make sure that there's a level of convincing that goes on there that auction is the best way to do it because we have such a higher percentage success rate with that. Mate, what was your experience if you were to share with everybody from the first instant? Because you did that for, 18 months, 2 years that you did that on a pretty high level. Like, what was your experience in that?
Yeah, well, obviously, that's the job, is go in and convince them to go to auction. You were the auctioneer. So I spent most of my time originally in the car with you. And one of the great parts about that was naturally being in a car, you are involved in a lot of conversations that you might not necessarily have been involved in had you not been there. And, it's that kind of learning through experience. And I think the word is like osmosis, where you're just around the deals and obviously standing at the auctions. It was actually kind of weird when I think about it now. And I've experienced it as an auctioneer with other people when they've sort of followed me around and spent some time with me. When you were doing the negotiations and talking to the owners, I would stand with you. so you'd be there talking to the seller and, talking to them about the market and the fact they should, a lot of the time readjust their price, and talking to a buyer about how they should come up, more money, or talking to an agent about their business and business planning. And I literally would just stand there and just listen and say absolutely nothing, for the entire time. And so for me, when I went into listing presentations on my own, or when I went to do stuff on my own without you, because you obviously, you weren't there, and anyone who obviously knows Ben or listens to his podcast knows that it's incredibly hard to get a word in. When I went on my own, I just regurgitated a lot of what I've heard, and then it started to work. So if I look back at that time, it was actually, if I hadn't have spent that time around so many deals, and mate, you were calling the better part of, probably 100 auctions a month. If I hadn't been spending time around those deals, I might not have had a level of understanding so early as I did, and I was super lucky.
I think that the thing that amazes me about you, mate, is your ability to absorb. And I this isn't a skill factor or whatever it is, but your ability to be in a conversation, your ability to record that conversation. You and I had the first friction point of your and I's relationship was when I did spend a little bit of time with you training you in the listing presentation. And those that know you and I will fucking hate this conversation because they've already heard it a million times. Is that I sit there and I do the agenda. Like we have an agenda when it comes to listing presentation, price, method, marketing, fees, comfortable, confident, all these different things. And I'm taking Mitch for this training.
Yesterday, 11 years later, the exact same session, funnily enough. So it's funny you bring that up.
It's good to see. It's good to see it still holds some weight, mate, in the real estate space in Australia. But
everyone else's first time, mate. Even though we might have done it a few times, when you're presenting with someone new, it's always their first time. But continue.
That's right. But like Mitch, you and I were in the boardroom. Yeah. And we're sitting there, and I have a learning difficulties. I do. I have to write things down. I have to recite them. My affection to Lee Woodward from the Real Estate Academy.
The CDs, in the car constantly real estate hot topics.
I'm Lee Woodward. But Mitch is sitting in the boardroom and I go through this agenda and I got annoyed. I'm like, well, mate, you're not writing any of this down. So what the fuck did I just say for the last hour? Like, what's going on? You're not writing any of it down. You're sitting there with a grin on your face and like, what did I just say? This kid turns around to me. Wasn't much younger than me, but turns around to me and recites literally what I'd been saying to him for the last hour, like verbatim. And at that moment, I knew that I was the stupidest person in the room.
Yeah, I did. That was a classic. You were very angry. And you know what? It's funny. Like everyone learns differently. And now, sometimes I find myself with the same thing. Thinking people, why are you writing this down or whatever it is? But everyone learns different. And I just seem to learn by listening and being around, situations. So, I think that there's a lot of time that goes into training and theory in real estate. But if there's anyone out there that's wants to go to the next level and get better, you need to spend time around people you respect and time around people that you value what they have to say and have a really good mentor. And I honestly believe that your success, and for the most part, is the quality of mentor that you have when you first start, because they actually show you and set the pace of what's possible. And it wouldn't come as a surprise, mate. You were a force of nature, back then, where you just got in and you ripped in and you got shit done. And I was just so lucky to have that. So that's my shout out to you, mate, for the and I often reflect back on the good times, and I wouldn't have had it any other way.
There's the official stamp, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I need. Podcast over. We've got him on record. We're good. But mate, I can appreciate that. But the thing that I think that was your ability to shut your mouth and actually absorb in the middle of those negotiations. But for those that don't understand what we mean by that, is that like we would literally turn up to a property, get out of the car, call the auction, go inside, try and this is, for lack of better terminology, guys, beat the seller to death because the agent had not done their job. But most of the time, we were almost so good to the perspective that the agent would probably not need to do their job too well and would rely on us when we would turn up. But mate,
you took control of that, mate. You liked the fact, and I've taken that through my whole time calling auctions, was you like the fact that you're there to do a job, which is to get the deal done, and that third party, coming into it, that's actually how you preferred it anyway.
Yeah, I did, but if I reflected on it, and we get a little bit philosophical as we go through the journey, is that if I reflected on it, I think whilst it's great to get a deal done, it was also, there was a level of complacency that I put in place for not all of our agents that we'd call auctions for, but how good the auctioneer is at putting the deal together. I put so much onus on that skill set. Again, you and I both have always said this. It doesn't matter how good you are out the front of an auction as an auctioneer. It's about putting the deal together that is the value that you can provide to that situation. And I think that we got so good at that. And I say we, that because we'll get to the point of you calling the volume of auctions that you did, but the reality is that the agents became complacent at educating their clients a lot of the time because they would rely on us to bring gaps together on the day. And I've got to be honest, if we reflect on that, Mitch, and this will be interesting to get your point on, the experience is one of the things that is forgotten some of the time by us as auctioneers being the third party involved, because you think about it, that seller has had a horrible experience with you and I. We're a complete stranger that has turned up, verbally beaten them to death with a verbal 2x4, okay, and then left, and and just this cyclone has happened to them. Most of the time, it wasn't justified education; it was just really harsh education. No wonder some of the time people wouldn't go back to that agent and sell their home with them again, even though they might have got a tremendous result. But that experience probably isn't the nicest experience. What do you think about that?
Well, sometimes you can wear it as a badge of honor and go, I did what I needed to do to get it done. And, I think sometimes you probably drove away thinking, without me, that probably wouldn't have happened, which you take as a positive. And maybe it did and maybe it didn't. And maybe you can justify it to yourself. Well, I did them a favor, because they needed to make that tough decision. And for the majority of the time, they did. And we did get a result that was over and above what they might have gotten had they made a decision on those days. But mate, when you talk about experience, it's so true, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you think of the situation or what you think is going on, or how you perceive that they're being ridiculous or oversensitive or whatever. All that actually matters in our gig is how they feel, and how they've taken the situation.
Yeah.
And there's so many I would have done differently and been able to take them on a better path, and everyone would have been better off, and felt better about it. So just because you are good and you get it done, and you sort of think your job is to get the deal done, that doesn't take away from the fact that you can always improve that experience.
Yeah, I think
also sometimes I think it was the worst. I felt always it was the harshest when the agent for the 4 weeks had probably not told them some truths, and you're coming in and they sort of expecting you to do that, and you did it because that was what you thought you're supposed to do. But realistically, that could have been a totally different situation had we worked better with the agent throughout the process, which later in my career, I got much better at talking to agents and officers about that process. So when I got there, it was a bit smoother.
It's funny how the agent is our customer, and we want to impress them, and we want to get the deal done for them. And it is like, again, regardless of whether it was $10,000 more or $10,000 less, they're still going to get a relatively similar commission. When the client really was the seller, and we would have been doing them more of a favor by handling it maybe differently in certain cases, so that was a repeat seller in the past. But again, moving through that,
I can't recall a time where I've ever wanted anything more than during an auction negotiation to get that deal done every time. That feeling of just wanting it at any cost to make that deal happen is a feeling that I haven't had replicated in any other part of my life ever. And by the way, that was part of the thrill of being a full-time auctioneer and everything, was that you felt that multiple times a day, and sometimes multiple times an hour. On the weekend, we had, a great auction event, and it was multiple times a minute. So, it's pretty exhilarating when you do see something come together, but the experience is something that's so important.
Yeah, mate. Again, I don't want to dive too deep into it, but like, how do you your first part of your journey was marketing, right? And I still remember that, like, you would go into a listing, and me as well. I believe the marketing was more expensive when I first started doing it versus when you were doing it. So these bills that we would rack up for the sellers, like, there was properties that were worth $700,000 that we would get them to spend $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 on marketing, and they would put that on a credit card, and they put that on a credit card. They, like, us knowing full well that their commitment that they've made in order to market this property was basically a commitment that they were going to sell it at any cost, really. Where do you draw the line from a moral perspective of people just recommending things that are better for them versus better for the client?
Well, if you're an agent that actually does the work, and you're actually that you do everything you possibly can to get the result, then the marketing money spent is great for the customer. So they spend the money, more buyers, more exposure, more reach, get more people through, create more competition. Where it gets all a bit weird is when you go and you get this huge investment from an owner, and then you, as the agent, don't even call the buyers back, or you don't even have enough open houses, or you don't do the work to actually extract the money out of that investment, and you expect it to all happen because they've invested this marketing and you don't do much. That's where it's wrong.
Okay, that's a really good point.
That's what I think of it. And so sometimes we'd be sitting there where we'd be with an agent who we knew was no good.
Mm-hmm.
We knew probably wasn't going to do the work, and probably that's where it got a bit like, and I can remember some conversations we go, whatever we said, I remember what we used to say, we used to go, we're going to have to keep a close eye on this one. We'll have to work closely with the agent. That's the one I reckon where it was like a bit of a, is this the right way to go?
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. There's, like, you're told that this is what you have to achieve out of a situation, but it might not. The person that's actually running that process. Wow.
Remember when the owners would go, so Ben, so you'll be running the campaign, right?
Mate, we still get it here. Like, I still, like, when I first started auctions here, like, I remember there's a guy who actually was one of the directors of LA Law, and we sold his house up in LA, and I had to commit to running the open houses, driving up to LA to run the open houses for him to give me the listing, and we were against Matt Altman and Josh Altman, so of course I committed to it. I got 0.5% for our auction fee. The other guy got literally, like, I think he got 110 grand.
Yeah. And, there's so many sellers that have had, really good results because they have, taken that risk with the marketing, and, there's so many campaigns that, I know you and I are super proud of, and, I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think that now in the industry in Australia, if the agents that have that naivety and have that boldness and that bit of spunk where they just go out and they do shit like that, I think we need more of that in the industry. Take more risks, because sometimes we can get a bit, oh well, we'll just stay in our box. We won't do that. And I think we need more. We need people with bigger goals. I know it's weird to say, but we need some younger people coming through who want to have a crack. And there's a lot of those in the industry, but I think we need more of it.
Well, I'm going to talk about that later on in the episode, mate. Is that where you're the youngest CEO pretty much on record to ever run a company in Australia. So we'll talk about that and the youth that you put, because you and I have often spoken about your goal for the company has to be big enough that everyone's goal within the company can fit within it. And we'll talk about that strategy. But the thing I want to keep on track with is that I had the opportunity then to come over to the US, and we took that opportunity to sort of jump over here. You, as the youngest chief auctioneer that has ever... 19 years of age. Now, guys, for those that are listening in North America, to be the chief auctioneer of a major real estate brand within Australia, rather, that's a pretty big deal. Like I remember that a few key individuals that Mitch knows their name and they will remain nameless, absolutely turning around to me going, "You're an idiot for allowing him to be the chief auctioneer." Obviously, one of the best decisions that they ever made was to allow you to continue to cut your teeth on that, but. Mate, how did you feel? Because you and I have spoken about it, but there's probably also ego in play for the both of us. But how did you feel me literally leaving the country and going, "Here, mate, here are the keys to a pretty decent auction business"?
Yeah, I loved it. Because you were getting out of my way. It was awesome. It was. When you told me, I was like, "This is great." You were doing what you wanted, and had you not had that opportunity, at that time. I would have it was before I was ready, as it always is. You're never ready. But also, I was like, how good is this? And I think the factor also that you knew that you backed me to do it. And at the end of the day, other people's opinions really didn't matter. And I can tell you hand on heart, those opinions to me, it wasn't that I disrespected the opinions at all, or the people that said them, because that actually wasn't the case. I have huge respect for a lot of those people. But to me, it really didn't matter because I knew that in the end I would prove them wrong.
Yep.
And that was a pretty cool feeling to have your backing to be able to do it. And I can't ever recall a time where I was not going to do it. It was like, yep, let's get into it. And mate, I was lucky too. A lot of not a lot, all of the clients, all of the customers that were doing auctions in Queensland and Harcourts and everyone, I had spent a lot of time around anyway because of my work with you. So it kind of just made sense. And, we talked a lot about you and I today, but, had it not been for those people in the early days in Harcourts in Queensland, who a lot of them, it's awesome because they're with our company now. So, that actually backed me and gave me the chance to do that. It wouldn't have happened. And, hand on heart, pretty much everyone in the group backed me and gave me the opportunity. And it was a cool feeling. And, in terms of pride, it was definitely one of the proudest sort of periods of my life for sure.
Yep.
Because it was awesome.
It didn't miss a beat, mate. Like I don't. There's only one person that I can recall that didn't give you the gig, but that was because they started calling them themselves. But I guess that the thing that there would have been times where your youth got in the way, mate. Like, don't get me wrong. I had less of that. I had the same, maybe not the same amount. I had less of it because I'd been in the group for a little while doing other things and whatever it is. But what did you do did you have to overcompensate because of your youth? Like, for young people listening that are worried about being too young, what did you do, mate, to build credibility?
You have to overcompensate because you have to be a lot better than maybe if you were a bit older. You have to be so, I don't want to say so good because that sounds arrogant. So I shouldn't actually say that. But you have to have a bit of daylight between you and everyone else to stand out, to get away with the youth. And also you got to use it as your advantage in the fact that you'll do things other people will not do. So, there wasn't a time of the day that I wouldn't work. There wasn't a flight I wouldn't catch. There wasn't a conversation I wouldn't take or a dinner I wouldn't do or a reserve set I wouldn't do or an open home inspection I wouldn't do. There was nothing that I would not do to actually, make it happen. And that gave me the edge over a whole bunch of people. And, the age thing is complete rubbish. I'm a massive believer in that, particularly in our industry. I can't talk for other industries, but, if you have a crack and you turn up with the right intention, in our gig, the agent is our client. They're there to be supported. not only in their real estate space, but mentally and emotionally, and supported in their business. And, when you actually give a shit about what you do and the people that you work with, people can feel that. And so it's pretty quick before you can kind of just get on with it. So in terms of it, it's like anything. If I had just taken it half steam and not overcompensated and been okay, then I just would have been okay.
Yeah. Well,
And
mate.
live with that, because I probably wouldn't have gone much further.
No, the proof of your success in that came by an opportunity that then you were given,
Yeah.
that you and I spoke about. You and I believed that we were building a real estate business that was the second best real estate business. When I say real estate business, auctioneering business
Yeah.
in the state, quite possibly the country. We use it in generalities, but realistically, we're like, Harcourts is the second best. The best was Ray White. From an auction perspective, they were what we perceived, and it was a perception, was the big leagues because of the volume of auctions that they were doing, and a particular auctioneer that was doing them, and a particular couple of auctioneers that were doing them. And this then came up where you got a tap on the shoulder by Ray White and were given an opportunity to become the chief auctioneer of Ray White Queensland. And just so that people know, for a context basis, mate, to give them a little bit of context, is that that's kind of like, being, the CEO of a small real estate company within the Pacific Northwest, or maybe a state within the US. And then Gary Keller comes over to you and taps you on the shoulder and goes, hey, come and be the CEO of Keller Williams, based on a size of opportunity and based off a legacy. I'm not saying that they're better companies. I'm saying that there's legacies, there's size, there's all these different things. That opportunity for you was, I believe, the best gig. Was the ability to turn it into the best gig, the best job, the best auctioneering position in the country, which is what you did at Ray White. Fair statement?
Oh, for sure. Like, the opportunity was amazing. And just the volume of agents, like, in terms of a, position, we're talking about a company much bigger than Harcourts in Queensland. So as you said, mate, a lot more listings, a lot more auctions, and everything that comes with that. So for me to get stuck in and apply kind of what I was doing at Harcourts into a bigger, just a bigger by volume, group. And there was also, for me, an opportunity to step out of the group that I'd always been with and been around, and, try and cut my teeth in a group where I didn't have the leg up of you or anything like that. It was an opportunity to go in and see what I could do there and
stake your own claim.
Yeah, for sure. And, there was never as much as it was a very, very hard decision just based on the personal relationship between you and I, it actually wasn't, because
we'd spoken about it, mate.
We spoke about it. And then when I sort of said, look, this is what I'm thinking, what do you reckon? It was pretty much about 10 seconds later where we decided that was the right way to go. And that was the end of it. So, although I sort of talk about it now and go, oh, it was a tough decision, because of my personal relationship with Ben and people in the group, and, everyone had supported me and everything like that. On that side it was, but, the decision was easy in the sense that I was going to do it once it was given. Let's
talk about it though a little bit further though, mate, because let's talk about the nuances of what you were doing, because I think people could get a lot out of this. You were stepping in, you were stepping out of the frying pan into the boiling pot. And what I mean by that is that it was the legacy of this company and the people that were in this company, their names had been etched in stone in the bedrock of auction in Queensland. These people were godlike figures that they'd been made out to us. Say that again.
Yeah, people with decades with the company, very, very established. And the complexity of the situation was, and that was no fault of anyone's, but it was just the way that it happened, was that the people that were there calling all the auctions, all of them were not stepping aside, and there was no path that was created to hand over anything. So the business was 0 auctions from day one, while competing against all the auctioneers that had all the different clients who not only weren't stepping aside, but were very, very agitated and angry that I was even there.
Yeah. And mate, how did, I know that you and I had spoken about how you were going to approach it, and outworking them was the first thing. And you'd mentioned it before. You were just going to really lay on what we did, because we did overcompensate from a level of service because of our youth. There's no
Yeah.
question about that, and we did that from day one. But
We
there was
respected the fee. We respected the auction fee in the sense that, and to give context, it's different to sort of obviously the US, but our fee is a fixed one-off fee, and so for the time of work you invest, which it could be 5-10 minutes at an auction, shorter than in rooms, whatever it is, you're very well paid. So we overcompensated because you knew when you were there and you turned up, you had to be correct, and you had to make sure you were beyond reproach, and you were doing amazing work to get that payment as well.
For the Australians that are listening, you will understand this when we pass in an auction, we had no bidders there, and then we'd offer to help you with your open house signs.
I've never taken the A-frame to the car when we've sold it. It's only when we haven't sold it. It's like justify the money that's been spent because I haven't done a whole lot,
So, mate, you derive a plan for me of what was in your mind when you had to go up against literally Goliath, mate. You were David versus Goliath. You were given the opportunity from the CEO and corporate, but there was no path laid. It was like, hey, mate, we're going to give you the title, but you've got to earn the title.
Yep. Yeah. So the words I was given at the time, which I distinctly remember, is power is taken, not given, and that was the advice I was given. And I look back at it now, and it was it was actually the best way to go into it, because you have no complacency. You're new, you're fresh, you want to make an impression, so you just go out and you just shake every tree you possibly can. I was also given advice: you have to go after the top offices. So you have to go up to the top offices first. So to give you a context, there's 150 offices in this group. Go after the top ones, because you can't be the chief auctioneer of the group unless you're calling for these people. But obviously, they were always going to be the most challenging long-term players to get. And so I disagreed with that advice and thought, well, why don't I just go and work with people that want to work with me and that I've got good business chemistry with? And I didn't go hunting for the auctions. I went hunting for the people that had the listings, the ambition, the drive, good people, wanted to work with me, open to working with me, and then we could possibly build the auctions. So we could take an office going from 5 auctions a month or 10 auctions, whatever it was, to 20 or 30, or in some cases, 1 auction a month to 5, or 0 to 5. Go after those ones. Create the auctions was my actual mindset. Let's create the auctions and create a business. And then what will naturally, I think, will happen, which it did, was you'd end up getting the bigger clients later, because they'd see the work you're doing and respect that. And I'm so proud that when I left the group, and this wasn't due to me at all, it was just due to the people that I aligned with and the work that we did together. The top auction officers in Ray White, when I left, were totally different to the ones that were 3 years prior. In fact, the number 1 auction listing office, we went on that journey together, and that to me was the best part of it, is seeing that happen. And we just created auctions. And I'll go on record as saying the biggest problem auctioneers have is that they go looking for auctions because they're lazy. They don't go out and create auctions.
No question.
And that was kind of our mindset going.
Well, I think that's where you got that skill set from what you had to do within Harcourts, is that, Harcourts doesn't have as big an auction culture as what Ray White does. And Ray White was just basically going in and just doing the numbers, and they were just doing big numbers anyway. The offices that weren't doing auctions, they're the ones you targeted because you knew how to build an office to do auctions, and then you reap the benefits of that. That's amazing.
And by the way, I'm not going to put that on me. Then what happened was you get momentum like any business. And then people that were doing auctions started using me as well. And then I did there was like a stream of business that I had that I didn't have to work as hard for. I just earned, I guess, at the time and it kind of was both. So there was the one where I was exerting, a whole bunch of energy to create the auctions and working with, and at the end, they turned out to be my favorite clients and and that's how it was. But then there was this other part, which was the stuff that came to me as a result of that work. And it's actually really similar to a real estate sales business when you think about it. That's what happened in the end. So it ended up in a position where, I was super happy, and some of the fondest memories of my life have been in that job. And I absolutely loved that job.
So let's talk about timelines here, though, mate. You got in. You started working with me when you were just turned sort of 18, but just before that, really, and then you became chief auctioneer of Harcourts Queensland. How old? 19. Yep.
Yep.
And then you got the gig when you was it 20 when you moved to
No,
Ray White?
no, 23.
Was it?
23. Yeah, I was the chief auctioneer of Harcourts for 4 years.
That was longer
It,
than what I was chief auctioneer, right?
yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was, so 23 years old I was.
Mm.
Yeah, that was when I was nervous
Okay.
when I said yes to that job, in between saying yes and actually starting, because I actually saw out my time with Harcourt. So there was a period of crossover where I was going, but I hadn't left yet. That was when I was nervous, going, you're gonna have to make this shit happen, mate, because this is happening. So this is this, whether you like it or not, you've really done it this time. You know what I mean? It's like, I just had to say yes, and that's how it had to happen.
So you're 23. You start at zero auctions again in a place where I've got to be honest, is probably one of the most daunting arenas to do it in. What did you get to? How long did you stay, and how many auctions were you calling when you left?
So I stayed until I was 27. So I was in the job for sort of almost 4 years. So I did a similar stint to Harcourts at Ray White, and in the end, my sort of numbers were oscillating, anywhere sort of around 200 to sort of, on a very, very good, solid month, I'd be getting over 200 auctions a month that I was calling.
Which put it in perspective, that's the best auction business in Australia on an individual perspective.
Yeah, it was a lot of auctions, and I was calling multiple in-room auction events a day. So I do an 11 o'clock. A lot of the time I do maybe a 2 or 3 o'clock, a 4 o'clock maybe, and a 6 o'clock. So I'd always call in the morning at 11, and I'd always call at night at 6. And then we'd sort of put ones in the middle, on-site auctions, and everything that came in between. So, it was sort of all the time calling, and we had great momentum. Businesses had great momentum, and it was sort of at a place where it was almost, particularly about last 12 months, you talk about being like a flow state, and you talk about being a specialist. I was a specialist at calling auctions, running auction campaigns, and managing those campaigns and helping through that process. And really, I think I've started to learn like leadership and leading these businesses where they wanted to go with their auctions. And the one thing I'd say is that I really cared, and I think in that last sort of 2 years is when I probably cared the most about calling auctions and the results that we got and the businesses we were building. And I think that probably just came from getting a bit better and understanding things better and getting a bit older. It was a cool time. So it was hard. It was. We'll get to that, I'm sure, in a minute. But it was hard to, when you're sort of flying at that pace. It was pretty cool.
Hard to get off the bullet train when it's going that fast, mate. Now, I want to ask you this about your skill set, because within Harcourts, you got to refine your skill set by the hands-on approach of going to a listing appointment, listing the auction, helping get the marketing, then helping with the seller meetings, with the phone calls that you'd make the way through, then doing a reserve set meeting prior to the auction day, then doing the auction. If it didn't sell, then helping them price it afterwards, and then also then nurturing the agent back to auction if they didn't sell it on the day of auction itself, and all of those different things. You had to run a very different role, but still the same role within Ray White, where you were much more, you just said it before, the leadership element that you would have to take with these people with the hands distance apart is instead of doing it for them now, you have to coach them to do it.
Yeah. So I knew this was going to come today. So it's probably the one I thought about the most, and that difference of mindset. You have to cop it on the chin that you're only one man or one woman. And if you want to grow your business, you have to figure out ways to scale it and be able to deliver more in the same hours in the day, because everyone's got the same hours in the day. So I really, when I was at, Harcourts, the badge of honor was we would have our first auction at 9 and we'd do it on the hour, sometimes less, until 5. And we'd have a massive day. We'd call 10 auctions and all that sort of stuff. And it was cool because a lot of pace, but you're not going to get to 2,500 auctions a year as an individual doing that. So I was like, righto, I've got to cop it on the chin. I've got to do in-rooms. And also, okay, that's good for me. And everyone goes, oh, well, you're an auctioneer, so that makes sense because you want to do more auctions, so in-rooms make sense to you. I'm sitting with business owners and I'm thinking, I remember the conversation we had. I said, how many auctions do you want to do, mate? He goes, oh, I'd love to do sort of 200 auctions this year. And he was doing all on-site auctions. And I was like, well, dude, you're never going to do 200 auctions on site. That's like over 200 hours. You're doing 4 or 5 on a Saturday. It's not going to work. So you got to go in rooms to get actually, to leverage more time and do 10 in a night. And so I really figured out quickly all of the offices that want to do big volume and had big auction ambitions had to do in-room auctions. And in the end, they were all doing in-room auctions, every single one of them. Yeah. So we do auctions a lot of time weekly, fortnightly, monthly for different businesses, depending. And for me, that was a leadership piece, which was how do we, instead of sporadically taking auctions as they come and doing them as they come, how do we get together every week? And every one of our clients had a weekly auction meeting. We talked about auctions, because by the way, if you want to do something in your business and you're not meeting on it regularly, it's not going to happen. So it's like every week we've got to get together. What's going on with our auctions? How many do we have for the next event? Are we on track, off track? And how are those campaigns going? And that rhythm that we were able to get actually had a business feel, as opposed to this, which is how it was in the beginning. Hey mate, it's Mitch. How you going? Yeah, good. How's the auction looking next week? Oh yeah, good. Any bidders? I'm not sure yet. Okay. How's the owner looking? They're a bit high, but we'll sort that out on the day. Righto, mate. Catch you later. I'll see you then. That was the conversation. And that you're not going to get to 2,500.
I just got chills down my spine because that's exactly what literally 4 years of my life was.
Yeah, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, but like you're not going to get that buy-in, because regardless of what, and mate, you've experienced this more than anyone else on the planet. If you don't get results, they're not going to keep doing it. So you've actually, I probably was in the early days. I go, we pass it in, it's all good, we'll sell it after. It's like, no, the mindset was we got to get them done under the hammer. How do we improve? And that involved being a bit harsh, and I've probably been accused of that a few times, as getting in and, giving everyone a bit
once
of
an Once or twice.
Yeah, up around, hey, what are we doing here? What are the offers? What are, moving it? Don't want to get into detail on this podcast, but unless you take it seriously, unless you take your business seriously and where you're heading seriously, and more importantly, have respect for yourself and your business to turn up in that manner, it's not going to happen. You're just rocking in thinking, she'll be right. Your business will be a she'll be right.
She'll be right means in North American terms, everything will be okay.
Yeah, everything will be fine. Like, it's all good. Like, your head's in like the sand, actually avoiding the issue, which is we got to get better at this. And, my years at that group and working with the officers that we did was all about how do we get better, and no one in the room thought they were a genius. We just had to keep getting better, and we did.
The funny thing that you say about that from a scale perspective, and making sure that people understand that scale is the only way that things like this have success. First of all, is that there's a reason that we're pushing auction as hard as we're pushing, because the most successful businesses in Australia and New Zealand, and even now in an international network of Harcourts, the number one office is the number one auction office. The number one agent is the number one auction agent. And bar none. Like, I mean, heads and shoulders above everyone else. So that's why we're doing auctions, because there's a higher percentage chance of getting the deal done and a successful result. Now, that said, is that it's the same thing that we did in North America. We had to do them on site, and then ultimately we figured out pretty quickly that when people didn't know what a successful auction looked like, and it was so difficult to get to, we needed to move it then to a position that it was then in rooms. And now we do them on an online fashion where we can auction properties all over North America at once. Scale is the only way, and having that thought process in its rawest form in every conversation is the only way to get to that scalable outcome. Sure, you can do a couple of good results when you're doing it the other way, but you're never going to be able to scale it to do volume. And I guess that you perfected that, mate, within a group that definitely wasn't used to that.
Well, they had done a lot of in-room auctions in the past. That's probably a bit hard. Like, they had done a lot of in-room auctions, a lot of auction campaigns and marketing events, and all that stuff was there. Probably by natural attrition of how it went, a lot of the clients I work with were ones that hadn't done a lot of that in the past. So I was kind of frameworking it off what they'd already done in the past anyway. But it was super local in the sense that every single office, I didn't try and group them in together and run a big rah-rah training session, because, by the way, you don't get anything out of that other than feeling good for a minute. When you're in an individual office talking about the specifics of the stock, talking about what campaigns are coming up, people take ownership of that in-room auction event and that extreme ownership mindset. And you've got to create that environment where every time you have success, they don't turn up and play NBA games, set up a few cameras and do it on a random basketball court. They're played at events that are organized in advance. They create the right environment. Golf, whatever you want to attach to, they create a professional environment to do the business And why would real estate be any different?
Yep.
So for us, it's like, how do we actually set this up so every time we actually have more chance of success rather than winging it, in a lot of cases and turning up and throwing an A-frame out the front and hoping for the best with the auction? Why don't we create an environment that's professional and actually, elevates all of our standards?
Tactical, and that's one of the things that I'm amazed at in the North American market that I think that we could take out of this conversation is that actually sitting down and talking about the individual pieces of inventory, where they stand at the moment, what the seller's expectations are now versus what they need to be, what offers do we have, what have we had, what is the level of interest that we need, and all of those different things. It actually isn't done. A sales meeting here in North America, Mitch, is somebody literally jumping on, giving them an industry update, maybe some of the legislation changes, and then not even individually going through it because they're too afraid of embarrassing an agent because they're not going through the actions that they need to in order to get it done.
And by the way, this was hard because I was loose in the sense that, it was kind of like we were good because we could talk and talk to people about their business and about their auctions and a bit ad hoc. It was hard to get the structure. Like when I say structure, every agent, every office had a Google sheet with the stock, where the owner was at, everything, a stock board. Every office had that was updated cell by cell individually with me in the room providing training around each particular circumstance. You should do this. You should ask the owner to get this offer. Like it was that specific. And that structure to me changed my life and changed my career. And that all of a sudden I was actually able to get real results and scale it, not just loosely do it because I've got a bit of an art form around how to deal with that.
Not convince the agent that after auction when they didn't get the bidders and they didn't get the result that, oh, hey, look, no, you ended up getting the seller down this much, so it was a success, and then have to then rally them back again. But external to that, mate, you obviously perfected this and you got it to a position. The snowball is an understatement from the effect that business had. It was awesome. It was big.
Yeah. And by the way, like success has a feeling, and any agent on this listening to this or whoever's listening to this, if anyone, that feeling of when you're in momentum and when you're in you talk about being an attraction agent and things are going your way, you actually get better as a practitioner and as a person and as a business person because you become unbelievably attractive to those around you because of the way that you carry yourself. And, for me, I was at that stage where, I was actually just super happy and motivated and pumped about being at work and doing great work. And I think that shows in your business and people know. And so if you're at a place where you're not towards that, try and move towards finding ways for that to be the case and not just going, this is how it's going to be forever, or that's all I'm capable of, or we'll never do that, or whatever it is. Think bigger and broader. And it's amazing how you rise to the occasion. And, I don't say this for any other reason, and I hope this is taken the right way, but Ray White made me think bigger and broader because they were bigger and broader.
It's the same with the US, mate. It expands your mental set from a perspective of what you thought is possible. And everybody needs that exposure if they're going to go to the next level at one point. But this is the thing that I'm so curious of, and I hope that others are as well. You sit there with with a Harcourts tie on as the CEO of Harcourts Queensland, out of the position that you're so fondly speaking of, and out of the success that you're so fondly speaking of. What changed?
So one thing I've learned, you got to trust your gut and you've got to know and try to figure out who you are, which, by the way, I don't think you ever figure that out. The best time to make a decision in your life, I think, looking back at it now, is when things are actually going well for you, because you can see things with a better perspective and you're not changing to try and get out of a bad place, or you're not trying to change to, scramble and this will change my life. And too many real estate agents change brands because they think the grass is greener. If I just was here, it'd work for me. The reality is the grass is greenest where you have a go. And you've got to constantly tuck yourself in to what you're doing. And the opportunity came up to go back to where I came from, obviously at Harcourts, which I knew, to be the CEO of the state. And I think that in my role, because of the way it was going and the relationships that I built and the business that we were, I would spend up more time, during the end thinking about what I might do differently if I was playing outside of auctions. So, maybe what's our recruitment look like? What's our, a recognition look like? Our performance, what are we doing with our businesses here? Do I agree with that? Do I not agree with that? And, it's very easy to throw stones when you're not kind of in the seat and it's not your gig. And you sort of get that mindset of, oh, maybe I might. And I probably was getting that bug, the leadership bug of, oh, this would be cool if we did this. And,
I could do that better.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I reckon and there's no doubt, like, I envied people who could make decisions like that.
Yep.
Because I was probably getting to the point where I'm like, that would be amazing to do that. But the fact that the opportunity came my way when it did, it was a tough decision in the sense that it meant I had to give away my identity and who I was as, a top-level auctioneer and something that I loved in my passion, to actually go and pursue long-term where I actually wanted to be. And I knew that I didn't want to be calling auctions like I was forever. That didn't necessarily mean it had to be then, and I could have done it for longer, no question. But the opportunity came up, and I sort of thought to myself, if you say no now, you better tuck yourself in and accept that this is your role within this company.
Yep.
And you need to be on board with that and be focused on what you're doing and be that guy within the company, and stop thinking about what you would do if you were that person. Or you've got to go and get the guts and take the risk of walking away from what you've got now to go and try and do it, to make that another company where you believe it could be. And there's no doubt Harcourts is an incredible organization who I've been with my whole life. In the sense that when my mum was a franchisee of Harcourts, I was standing at her office opening when I was 12 years old. I've been around the group. I love the people in the group. And I just thought, how incredible would it be if I could bring the energy I'm bringing to the auction business and actually take it broader and wider again, and go broader and wider again, and have a crack and see if we could achieve things like I'd seen other people achieve.
Let's talk materialistic, though, and ego for a second, because I think that this is a point that everybody needs to understand and everybody needs to probably learn from, is that you accept you're on less money now than what you were then. And,
yes.
and ultimately, and like, I mean, there was some significant money being churned out of that auction business, more money than I thought possible within the auction space. Second to that, though, is that, did ego play into the conversation, or ego play into the decision in any way, shape, or form, or did you have to check yourself because of that title of CEO?
No, of course it played into it. Like, you're kidding yourself if it didn't. Of course. Like, it's like, I'm 20, at the time I'm 26 years old. I'm offered this opportunity to go be the CEO of a huge group, and an exciting group. Like, we're a hungry, vibrant, growing brand. It's like, we're not the hunted, we're the hunter. And so it's like, you get to go and, very similar to when you went to Ray White and, you had no auctions, and you get to go, you go into a business that has great people within it, and has all its future and its best years ahead of it. And these dudes are asking you to be the leader of it. Like, it was kind of like, of course I want to do that.
Yeah. But how did you curb your mindset financially, though, mate? Like, again, like it's like again, coming to the US and starting from scratch, like, I walked away from something that was 1/10 of the significance that you walked away from. It's okay if you don't know how to answer it.
That's a good question. That was all.
That still keeps me up at night.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about just so many things. That was all that was ever going to be.
Okay.
So while you get paid to be a star player, and you get paid to be a gunslinger and to be a ball of energy that just does shit and goes out and just makes money and creates revenue and makes people feel good and all of that stuff that comes with being a great auctioneer. And I loved it. That was all it was ever going to be. But if you think about big goals, big game, stepping up yourself and your own life and actually going, I want a life that is of, more significance, and I want to build something that I'm proud of. And I really thought about that and thought, who do I want to be in 10 years? I didn't care about the money, the pay. I didn't care.
Yeah, okay.
And I didn't care, and I'll put on record now, because I know that in the end, I'll make more money.
So this is the part of it that another question that sort of comes to mind. Why not stay there, build a legacy of getting shit done like that you did within Ray White? Ray White is a bigger company, and Ray White
Yeah.
is a significantly bigger company, and try and get the opportunity to be the CEO of Ray White, whether it be nationally or whether it be in that state. You said something just before, Ray White is the hunted. You're the huntee in this situation. Was that
Yeah.
that the reason, or did you not see a clear path?
Well, the path would be longer because they have, there's other people within those roles, and you have to sort of wait your turn. If you even got the opportunity to do that, but that's a whole other thing. I won't get into that. But so no, I didn't want to. I wanted it to be here because when I thought more about it and really got in touch with what I want, I want to create an environment that is in line with what I believe, which has been my whole career, which has been in franchising, that agents and principals and property managers and administrators want to be a part of. And is something that's new, and we can blaze a trail for what it's going to look like in the future. And, this is coming back to ego. I wanted that to be because of my energy and my ambition and where I wanted to take it. And I wasn't going to be able to do that there at that time.
So let's put it,
something to take by the horns and go, you know what, let's have a good crack at this and build it. And, mate, obviously seeing what you've done in the US and the difference you've made there, seeing what our big businesses have done, not just big businesses, I shouldn't say that, but, some of our businesses in Queensland that have absolutely carved out market leadership positions, in against officers from other brands that were number one, they become the market leader. I just think there's good sport in that. There's good, it's a good way to live your life is to actually have a crack and build something.
So let's put it on the record.
Yeah.
Okay. 5 years, where's Harcourts Queensland? Sorry, where are you now? Where are you now?
So our position now in Queensland is that we oscillate sort of around the number 2 and 3 position. So we're number 3 in terms of market share, but we're very close to our number 2 competitor. And then there's a very large gap in between us and Ray White. And by the way, that market share or that quest for market leadership and being number 1 is one part of it. That's one part of the overall gig. And whether we get there in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, I don't necessarily have the timeline of which it has to happen. But I will say this, and if we want something on the record, is that the timing's not important to me because I know if we do the work and we are true to who we are, who we want to be, which is a vibrant, hungry, company that's growing with good people and providing a great environment, that we're going to get there anyway.
Does number one not...
I had with Ray White.
Right.
I went into it. I knew I was going to get there anyway. I didn't know how long it took. I knew it was going to happen.
Does number 1 lose its appeal over time and just outside of just building something that's significant?
Don't know. You have to ask me in a few years. Like, I don't know. Whether it's. I don't get up in the morning thinking about, I've got to be this or I've got to, or obsessing of what we have to be or what our position has to be. What I do know though is we've got to be able to look at people in the eye and we've got to have an environment where people want to be a part of it and it feels good. And you gave me a very good piece of advice early on, which was if it feels awkward, it is.
Yeah.
Listing presentation. Let's go right back to the beginning. Apply that now. If the company feels off or we're not going in the right direction or whatever it is.
Yep.
So we've got to try and get back to that place. And, I can't take any credit for this, by the way. This company's been around since 1888. We've had a long history of market leadership in a whole array of markets. We're not strangers to this by any means. I just knew that in my little world in Queensland and in our markets here, that we can keep getting better. And that's what I wake up thinking about.
Also for the record, Mitch has absolutely publicly, openly admitted that he will never ever move to the US with me unless I gave him probably $100 million a year.
Actually, we could be less than that, but it's and it's funny. Like,
you do love Queensland. You are a true Queenslander.
Yeah, I'm. Mate, it's the greatest place in the world. Not that I'm biased, but hey, where else would you want to be? Seriously.
Now, mate, let's talk about. I I know that we're going for a little while here, and I hopefully there is somebody still listening. But ultimately, if they've gotten to this point, they're dedicated, and we're doing some good things. Because I want to talk about some of the emotions that fueled you, and they fueled me as well in the very beginning of things. You know, we are very people passion's an understatement for the two of us. You know, we get in a room together and then we elevate the volume of passion to a perspective of that then nobody can tolerate either one of us.
The key thing is volume. The key word there, volume.
Yeah, David would ultimately attest to that. Poor bastard.
So if he add him in, he then goes to another level.
Level.
Him above all. But anyway,
let's keep this progressing. Is that mate, I think that the one thing that I have often said to you is that I don't have the mental stamina to ever be your enemy, and not that I'd ever would be anyway. But there's something that early on in your business that there was some very big naysayers that you used as fuel in order to push you to the extent that you got to. Now, whether that was Harcourts early on as chief auctioneer, whether that was Ray White, whether that be now.
Yeah,
you know, there's something that I've learned over here is that, you know, anger and resentment and wanting to prove somebody wrong will get you out of bed in the morning. It won't keep you going.
Yeah.
Where do you use that now versus where did it start?
I think I still use it all the time now. Like, I think, you know, and mate, you're probably a bit more progressed. You know, you talked about this quite a bit than me. But, you know, the one thing that you can't deny about, you know, people that in this industry seem to excel, whether they want to admit it or not, is a level of competitiveness. You know, you have to have a thing in your you know, Dane Atherton actually talks about this most eloquently. It has to bother you at some level if you see a competitor's signboard, and if you're driving past that and going, oh, you know, good for them, you know, and that's you're probably not going to go to an elite level in terms of your career. But if you're driving past it and you go, you know, oh well, that's you know, why didn't I get that? You know, there's a totally different mindset with that. And for me, you know, I love the level of competition, and, you know, I really, really like it when I'm competing for something. And whether that be for somebody's approval, whether it be for someone's business, whether it be for, you know, a competition, you know, of auctioneering, whatever it is, like whatever it is, I love that. It makes me feel really good and it makes me feel really, really alive. But I reckon that the need for approval or whatever it is where it gets a bit weird. And you don't really need that. You know, you have to accept the fact that not everyone's going to like you. That's just the way that the life is, and that's supposed to be that way. So for me, if you think about what drives you, I'm 100% a competitive person, and I want people around me to have success, and that's why I'm, you know, really, really conscious of the way that I turn up in order to get that. And I reckon that every time I reset myself with goals and I actually go to the new goal, I try and get in touch with that competitive nature, and I try to understand what my competitors are doing, and I try to figure out how do I get the edge over them in some way. And there's lots of ways, by the way, where they completely, you know, they destroy me. You know, they're doing so much better than me in so many different ways. So try and find ways that I can compete. What's a level that I can compete with today and win that? You know, win that moment. You know, is kind of my thoughts around it. And mate, of course, people along the way that, you know, I don't like and never will. So
yeah,
that's just what it is.
We said to ourselves we won't say names, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Now, the thing that
for the Instagram piece.
Mate, Chris is going to love cutting this up at the shorts. This is great. But the thing that I struggled with coming to North America, there was two things that I struggled with that I actually loved about Australian real estate was the competitive element. Now there's a competitive element in what we do. There's no question about that. But here, because there's a buyer side to the transaction, and if you, for lack of better terminology, fuck someone, okay, and they're on the other side of a deal that they're representing a buyer that they probably would just say, no, don't go and look at that property, or they would just screw the deal over completely.
Yeah.
It wasn't, there wasn't that level of aggression or that level of competitive nature within the business, because people would drive past another sign and go, oh, that's so good for them, I might find a buyer for it. That was the part that I struggled with to that extent.
Yeah. Yeah, that is weird because it's different to here. Like here, it's very much you have to win the listing. You have to sell yourself. The first sale you make is a sale to the owner to actually employ you as their agent. That's actually your core sale.
Yeah.
Your job's not to sell homes; it's to find homes to sell
here.
And mate, to wrap it all up, like in what you're talking about, I play to win. There's nothing wrong with wanting to win.
No.
And I think when people get embarrassed about that, or they go, oh, well, no, I just want everyone to have a good time and everything like that. People can have a great time and you can be a good person and you can be doing good business and you can elevate the people around you and the environment while also winning. You can do, like in your own mind, you can do both. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it gets a stigma, particularly in Australia, that there's something wrong with that. And I don't like that because it's not.
Where's the feeling of, you said this to me the other day, actually when we were talking about this, I asked, there's a really clear distinction between Australia and the US in the tall poppy syndrome. Like in the US, like for example, you and I always did quite well for ourselves financially, and we always liked the finer things in life. And ultimately, when we would use those finer things in order to show ourselves, like materialistic natures when you're younger is certainly an attribute of your life. There's no question. And mine certainly was put through in a very expensive car that, we did things in a more conservative nature, and we wouldn't tell people when we would go away, and we wouldn't do these different things when we were younger because we were so worried that the perception within Australia is that we're doing too well and they want to drag us down. The US is completely different, mate. Even me, the CEO of Harcourts North America, I could pull up in a Lamborghini out the front of the quarterly awards and everyone would come out going, congratulations, Ben, you're doing so well. It's so great to be on board with you because we're going so well. Whereas in Australia, you'd be called a dickhead. So,
cool.
So, mate, where is that at from how do you manage that from a cultural perspective, that the better people or the younger people or the people on the rise or the people trying something different or trying to stand out within Harcourts Queensland, how do you work on the culture within that business so that it's not that?
You have to create an environment where people, we celebrate success. So we recognize success. And also, from our perspective as the corporate team, we have to be more energetic. And by the way, we are, because this is the thing we talk about all the time. We have to be more energetic about the group and the group's future than our people are within the group. Like if our energy is not higher than our business owners and our agents and our property managers and our administrators about the future of this company and where it's going, then that's quite sad. Because if they've got more energy than we do, and you see it as a salesperson that comes into a business and they've got more energy than the principal, they don't stay because they go, well, I'm here working and I've got big visions, you're never here and all the rest. So for me, it's creating an environment where success is not only okay, is not only recognized and applauded, but it's revered. Good on you for doing that. Look at what this person's doing and, how they're having a crack and what can we learn from them? What can we learn from their success and apply that in our own business and just being okay with that. And, I think I said it before, you can be a high performance person and be a good person with the right intentions. It's not one or the other. You can do both. And by the way, no one gets it right every second of the day. We all make 1,000 mistakes all the time, but we're all here to get better and make each other better. And, when you get really, enlightened on this, as long as we're all heading in the same direction and we're all having a crack and our energies, we're on the footing on the accelerator and we're having a go, then we're all going to be okay. Yeah,
no question. Well, mate, I think that for the respect of the people that are listening, is that I think we might need to wrap this bad boy up, mate. There was a part of me today that wanted to intro with the I don't know, the themes that you and I have had over our vacations over the years. Car park Cuban with Mr. Jim Mingley.
It's gonna go ahead and holster that. It's gonna holster that comment.
Mate, there's been too many folks. Mitch actually flew out and surprised me for my 30th one year. Him and Callista came out, and it was one of the most amazing things ever. He spent literally 48 hours in the US
Yeah.
just to come over for my 30th. And we went up to LA. We painted the town. We certainly had a wonderful time. And the one moment that I distinctly remember is Mitch and I were down at the bar at the hotel philosophizing about
Yeah.
just the world and how things should work. We're lucky we didn't have a whiteboard out trying to solve the problems. And I woke up to myself at one point, obviously a little bit under the weather from an alcoholic perspective, and there was 15 gin and tonics on the table that were all full. That Mitch had just kept ordering and ordering and ordering.
It's kind of the flow. Like I feel like I had to keep, as if we were somehow drinking them, but I wasn't quite sure. But on that point, and I know wrapping up, like, there's no doubt, if everyone's really honest with themselves about their business and their life and their career and everything like that, is that rather than thinking about what you want to do, or who you want to be or what you want to achieve, you realize how important it is to actually is more important of who you're doing it with, and the time and who you're actually spending your time with, and do you enjoy the journey? And I don't want to get too philosophical, but do you actually enjoy the time? And I could tell you that my most fondest memories of my career have been in times where you have had that joke and that constant enjoyment of what you're doing, and being able to laugh off the shit times, and get through them and really enjoy together with good people the good times and everything like that is so important. And one thing I'd say the biggest lesson I've learned, in leadership, since going from a very selfish auctioneer role where you're kind of very focused on yourself now to leading a team and indeed an organization, is that the most important people are the ones you're actually in business with and your team, and actually creating an environment where they enjoy coming to work. You go to a high performance place when the people that are on the journey want to be there and are enjoying it. So if you're there and you think your team are there to serve you, or that they're there to do a task or whatever it is, you're only going to get out of that what you put into it.
Yep.
And then you taught me this lesson right from the start, is that regardless of the fact that I worked for you and I had things that I needed to do and I had, a role to play and I had to do my job, I never felt like I worked for you. I felt like I worked with you. And I think that, that actually inspired me to be better every day.
Yeah, so. But the good people, mate, the other part of that as well is that the good people inspire the fact that I never had to tell you what to do. And I'm sure that you've got that within the team that you work with now, and I've got that within the team that I work with, is that, there's certainly some people that need to be guided. There's no question about that. And then, at the end of the day, not everybody's going to be able to take a direction or know what to do next. But I never had to tell you what to do. You always knew what you had to do. You walked into a situation, or I only ever had to show you once, or I only had to tell you what the expectation of was you one time, and then you knew what to do. The good ones always do. So I think that having the right people on the bus is the thing that makes the business so much more enjoyable, but also so much easier. It just is easier. It's way easier. And like you could probably speak to that about Troy and your team, and I can speak to that about Josh and my team. In Callista, having Callista in the business, it's just easy to see success through, and you enjoy coming into work and you enjoy being around those people. But, the best part about it also, and I'm thinking about it now, is that I couldn't tell you the number of auctions or the property that we auctioned together, the three of us, you, me, and Callista on the weekend in the car.
I was actually kind of part of your relationship in the beginning. I think you were only really together for not long, and then I met you guys. I've never actually known you not together.
That's right.
But this was very new on the scene, and it was quite weird when you. And I think the weirdest part was that Callista would sit in the back, and then I would sit in the car.
No, the weirdest part is that our studio, our one-bedroom apartment in the city in Charlotte Towers, we would go out and have dinner and drink all night, and then you would fall asleep on our lounge room floor on the blow-up mattress, and then drive back home, right, get changed, and I'd come and pick you up from home to go to the auctions. Anyway, we could reminisce all day, but mate, I think this has been incredibly valuable. Congratulations on all of your success. I think that the one thing that I can take some element of pride in is that I might have had a little bit of involvement in the fact that of the person that you are now, because at the end of the day, it's somebody that I think is going to take things to the next level. So thanks for joining us on Rethink Real Estate.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.